Good evening. We are back to the study of the Spirits book. We are today going to start chapter 6 of book 2, which is Spirit Life, which is life of the spirits in the spiritual world. We are going to start with question 223, and the title is Errant Spirits. Errant spirits are discarnate spirits. According to Spiritism, what Kardec teaches us, we have incarnated spirits, souls, according to Spiritism, and discarnated spirits, errant spirits, or wandering spirits. That's another word in English that can be used for this word that also means errant spirits. Spirits that are wandering in the spiritual world between reincarnations. And we are going to look at it a little more in depth. Philip?
223. Does the soul reincarnate immediately after being separated from the body? Sometimes reincarnation happens immediately, but more often it occurs after longer or shorter intervals of time. Reincarnation is almost always immediate in higher worlds. Corporal matter is less coarse in those worlds, and the spirit retains nearly full use of its spiritual faculties while incarnated. Its normal state is that of a lucid somnambulist.
Okay, some things to separate here from what the spirits are saying. The question from Kardec is that if we reincarnate immediately after being separated from the body, and we know that that doesn't happen. The spirits tells us sometimes reincarnation happens immediately, it's possible, but more often it occurs after longer or shorter intervals of time without any definition how long and how short. Remember, we are eternal spirits, so the time we spend in the spiritual world can be long or short, but it doesn't really matter much in terms of us as eternal spirit. Now, he gives a concept, the spirits give a concept here that reincarnation is almost always immediate in higher worlds. Why would be that the case? As we, at our level of evolution, we understand that the more we evolve at our level, again, at our level of evolution, the more we evolve, the more time we can spend in the spiritual world because we can learn there. Now, when a spirit reaches a higher world, and again, we are in a world of trials and expiations, then there is a world of regeneration, then there is happy worlds and perfect worlds. So when we reach the level of happy worlds, I imagine that's what they are mentioning here, because it's not yet in the world of regeneration, the spirit has the ability to live, have a physical body, but interact with the spiritual world at all times or most times. The state of a lucid somnambulist. Again, somnambulist is a state of a trance state in which the spirit interacts with the incarnate spirits, interacts with the spiritual world, detaching from the physical body, or even using the physical body in the case of sleepwalking, but we are going to study this later in the book. Okay, so we know that primitive spirits have a reincarnation almost immediately after it goes back to the spiritual world, because there is not much use for those spirits, primitive spirits, to stay in the spiritual world. There is not much that they can learn there. Now, the concept of higher world reincarnation being almost immediately, it has to be because the spirits have the ability to learn both in the physical world and the spiritual world at the same time. Otherwise, that wouldn't make much sense, because the spirit can learn a lot out, as we are going to see in a few questions, when they are in the spiritual world. Okay? So a spirit retains nearly full use of its spiritual faculties while incarnating when in more elevated worlds. The more we evolve, the more we have access to our past, because we can deal better with our past, and the more we have this openness to the spiritual world, that these days we here on Earth we see only some mediums that have this ability, and some people in dreams, but the most common state of us here incarnates is not to have an open interaction with the spiritual world. Okay.
But there is incarnation and reincarnation, right? The reincarnation here for us is one thing. The reincarnation that higher worlds be something not comparable with the reincarnation. It still is acquiring a more dense body, but this more dense body is so subtle that perhaps even more subtle than our spirit is right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
224.
Benny.
So I'm trying to visualize that situation in a higher world. It will be like maybe doing a FaceTime with someone who's in the spiritual world, and we are talking, interacting, or just being there, like sort of like bring to my dimension a little bit.
No, I think, yeah, I think it's more like the FaceTime than being there. You know, it's the interaction with the spiritual world. I would understand more in the sense of, a medium like Divaldo that sees spirits all the time, and I had trouble sometimes differentiating what they are incarnates and discarnates. You amplify these to a higher world, right? When there's difference between incarnate and discarnate, you will be able to differentiate, to understand, and to interact with the spiritual world and the physical world. Not in the sense of a FaceTime like we know it, but in the sense of really of being here and there at the same time, living in the two planes of existence at the same time. That's my understanding, I believe.
But there's still, the reincarnation is still necessary.
Yes.
For the learning and
They're still
okay.
not pure spirits. Yes.
Okay.
They will be, and we'll see very shortly, right? We will be errant spirit until we become pure spirit. When we become pure spirit, we no longer need to reincarnate. Okay.
224.
Yes.
What happens to the soul in between incarnations? It becomes an errant spirit, hoping for a new destiny. It is in a state of waiting. How long can these periods last? From a few hours to thousands of centuries. There are no predetermined limits to the errant period, which may carry on for extensive intervals of time, but is never perpetual. Sooner or later, a spirit is permitted to start a new life to purify its previous lives. Does the length of time that a spirit is left in the errant state depend on the spirit's will, or can it be imposed as a means of atonement? It is a consequence of the spirit's free will. Spirits are fully aware of their actions, but in some cases, it is also a punishment inflicted by God. In others, it has been granted at their own request to enable them to pursue studies that are easier or more effectively carried out in the spirit state.
Okay, so there are several things here, right? First is the definition of errant spirit. It is in a state of waiting, but state of waiting doesn't mean not doing anything, right? The spirit is doing things in the spiritual world. And one concept that is very important for us to remember while we are studying this is the true home of the spirit is the spiritual world. The incarnation, the physical world, is a transitory state of the spirit, which is not the true home. So we are eternal spirits that belong to the spiritual world, that have experiences in the physical world in order to improve, as we're going to see in a couple of questions. I know that Danny asked this question a couple of classes ago, right? How long can the spirits last? And you see here the answer, Danny, from a few hours to thousands of centuries. Thousands of centuries. So the spirits are telling us here that there is no determinate period between incarnations. We can talk, like I answered when I answered Danny's question, we can talk in general, you know, where at our level of evolution, anything from 50 to 100 years would be probably the majority, but not the totality, not even close. Many spirits reincarnate before that. Many spirits take longer. We study in the book Liberation, Gregorio, who is there in the spiritual world for more than 500 years, immersed in his own world and not reincarnating. And finally, when his mother rescues him, is when he's going to prepare for a new reincarnation. So there is no predetermined limit. Depends on the necessity of the spirit and, to a certain point, the will of the spirit. To a certain point, because there are those that try to avoid reincarnating for a long time. Eventually, it has to stop. They need to reincarnate because that's the natural law. The law of reincarnation is one of the natural laws. We need to reincarnate. And there are spirits that are willing to reincarnate very quickly because they want to forget what's going on with them. And a way of forgetting the troubles that you are going through and in the spiritual world is to come to a new incarnation where you will forget everything that happened before, or most of the things, right? So this is what they say, the spirit says here. We know that the punishment inflicted by God does not exist, right? The punishment comes from ourselves. So we are the ones that end up consciously or unconsciously making these choices of our next reincarnation. Again, there are spirits that do not believe in reincarnation here, go back to the spiritual world, continue not believing in reincarnation because they continue to have their own beliefs, and they will be brought to a new reincarnation without being aware what's going on. It happens a lot also. So there are no two cases that are the same. There are different characteristics and different challenges for each spirit. The end here, the spirits talk about granted their own request to enable them to pursue studies that are easier or more effectively carried out in the spirit state. André Luis, for instance, he never asked for it, but he's spending all this time, he was spending all this time in the spiritual world with a lot of learning, a lot of new experiences that he's having. So everything that he's learning there, for him specifically, again, individually, was better to have all this learning in the spiritual world, also because he was going to give us all this knowledge that he brought to us, right? Doesn't apply to everyone, each case is a case. But we can learn in the spiritual world. In the book, I Came Back, Voltaire, that's not translated, Brother Jacques spends 2 to 3 years studying in the spiritual world, apart from all the people he knew, to have a better opportunity to focus and learn on the studies without being distracted by the ones, his daughter and the spirits that he knew, the ones that were above him that he felt a little bit jealous of during the beginning and looking for his inner light that he didn't have. So he received this opportunity. And again, 2-3 years in the spiritual world compared to our eternity, it's nothing, right? It's a part of the process of evolving. We don't get old in the spiritual world, right? We acquire more experience. Okay?
Have you heard anything about this very low birth rate we have today? Has any consequence in the reincarnation rate? Of course, how does it affect? Have you heard anything from it?
I think what I heard is that Earth is it's reaching a point of equilibrium, right, with this low birth rate, where we can better adjust to the population that we have to improve the conditions for everyone. But in terms of the spiritual consequences, because spirits can incarnate anywhere, so if they don't have the opportunity to come here, they'll be taken in groups.
Find somewhere else.
Yeah, in groups to another planet. So, I don't know if this concern about the reduction in birth rate is something. It's affecting the more developed countries, right? Mostly, and that, again, that's me speaking here. That may be an opportunity for us to receive spirits from less developed countries that we can help us, we can help them, and can mix a little bit more the races and everything, right? Actually, race is not a word that we use anymore, so I need to learn to use different words. Okay. Danny.
So in the case of Gregorio, I don't remember much. I read the book many years ago. He was doing a lot of damage in the spiritual world, right? He was the leader of a
lower zone, yeah, of a region, a very low region, yeah.
So in his case, wouldn't he be forced to reincarnate to stop doing that? But he took 500 years to.
Not exactly, because what we have to understand also is that we read the book and we think that he's only doing evil. Actually, his actions help educate, in a sense, other spirits that need to go through their difficulties, right? So because God uses all instruments available, so he's being unknown to him, he's being an instrument of God to at least take care of a region and control a region, of course causing consequences for him, right? But why he's able to control that region? Because there are spirits that vibrate at the same level, end up in these places, and these places have their own organization that keeps some sort of control in what's happening there, right? And he truly believed that he was doing the right thing, right? It's not that he was causing harm, thinking I want to cause harm on others. No, he if you reread the book, you see that when he has these discussions with Andrea Luiz and what was the mentor, Gubbio, he talks about that he's doing God's justice. That that the justice that he's doing is what is needed for that region. So it's very easy for us to see him as just as a bad spirit and that's it. But he was fulfilling a role that may be necessary for that group of spirits at our level of evolution. Now, regarding the second part of your question, for him to be forced to reincarnate, it's very difficult because he becomes powerful in that position that he has. So for him to be forced to reincarnate with that level of mindset wouldn't make much of a difference. He would come here and use or either he comes incapacitated for some reason, or he comes and will continue to use his willingness to cause damage to others. So the way that they were able to access him, that you probably don't remember also, is that he gets a little, after 500 years of doing the same thing, he gets a little bored of it. Very little bored. He doesn't think that he's doing anything wrong. But the moment he gets a little bit bored is the opening that the spirits have to access him. Because when you get bored, you are open to change, right? Even if you're not conscious. But when you get bored, what do you want to do? You want to do something different, right? I'm bored here. I want to do something different. So he will open himself to receive the assistance. But I don't know. Do you think that you think anything different what I said in regard that he had his role there?
No, I agree completely. I mean, sometimes I have to keep the big rat in power to control all the small rats. You know, that's the case of the Iraq war. The whole world say, please don't do that. You're gonna mess up the whole region and see the consequence. They took off the big rat, they keep all the small rats in check. Now it completed disarray. In the spiritual world, be the same thing. His function over there was to somewhat control all the small rats under his power. It's much important to have all of them do whatever they want. So he plays a role helping without the intention of being helpful, of course, to maintain some kind of control in that zone. And then his incarnation will be forced upon him if he's ready to benefit from it.
Yes, that's very important. Okay, then.
To 25?
Yep.
Is the quality of being errant a sign of a spirit's inferiority? No, because there are errant spirits of every degree. As we have already told you, being incarnated is a transitional state. Spirits are detached from matter in their normal state. That's,
again, what we mentioned before, but it's very important, this concept here, right? There are errant spirits of every degree. Emmanuel is an errant spirit, right? St. Francis of Assisi is an errant spirit. Bezerra de Menezes, whose birthday is today, is an errant spirit. Jesus is not an errant spirit. He's a perfect spirit. But all the others are errant spirits of every degree. Errant spirit is a spirit that needs to reincarnate, still needs to reincarnate. But the important thing here is, again, for us to remember, being incarnated is a transitional state, spirits detached from matter in their normal state. Our normal state is being back in the spiritual world. We spend, as we progress, we spend more and more time there and less time here until we get more to higher worlds when we spend more time incarnated and discarnated again, as the spirits tells us, right? Okay, 226.
Is it accurate to say that all spirits who are not incarnate are errant? Yes, in terms of those who are going to reincarnate. Pure spirits have reached perfection and are no longer errant since their state is definitive. Depending on their inherent qualities, spirits belong to different orders or pass through varying degrees of advancement successively as they become purified. Regarding their state as spirits, they may be incarnated or tied to a material body, errant or disincarnated from a material body, disengaged from a material body, and awaiting a new incarnation for further improvement, or pure spirits who are perfect and have no further need for incarnation.
Okay, so pure spirits have reached perfection, are no longer errant. It's a definitive state. The fact that they no longer need to reincarnate doesn't mean that they cannot incarnate. Again, when we talk about Jesus' incarnation on earth, we say that Jesus incarnated on earth, not reincarnated on earth. Because again, we use reincarnation for spirits that are still progressing. So Kardec then defines the three states: incarnated or connected to a material physical body, errant or disengaged from the physical body, or pure spirits who have no further need for reincarnation. Okay.
227?
Yeah.
How do errant spirits learn, since it cannot be in the same manner as incarnate people do? They study their past and try to think of ways to rise to a higher degree. They observe everything that is happening around them while listening to the discourses of enlightened individuals and the counsels of more advanced spirits than they are, and this provides them with ideas they do not possess.
Aren't the spirits describing what we read in André Luiz and Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, for instance, that describe their experiences in the spiritual world, right? They observe everything that is happening around them while listening to the discourses of enlightened individuals and the counsels of more advanced spirits than they are. That's what we read in the books. André Luiz's books always start with a lecture from high order spirit, and he's learning all the time from a spiritual mentor that always accompanies him to his excursions. He's learning. So the question for Kardec is, it cannot be in the same manner as incarnate people do. It's not really, because there is some similarities in what they do in the spiritual world, the way they learn, and how we learn here, because we here are a bad copy of the spiritual world. So what we have here, classes and lectures and experiences, it's a reflection of what, more or less, of what we have in the spiritual world, that gives the opportunities of the spirits, errant spirits, to learn there in the spiritual world. Okay.
Well, can I say that in the spiritual world, because you have a kind of a broader vision, it's easier to learn than here, because here you don't have my mentor. I mean, I do have my mentor by me most of the time, but I don't see, talk.
Yes.
Over there, it's easier.
Yes. Yes, it's easier. You don't have the physical body preventing you from from experiencing things, but sorry. So yes, in some ways it's easier in the spiritual world. But the one thing that the spirits mention to us, and we're going to see this again, is you learn there, but for you to put in practice, you have to incarnate, right? Because in there you can put in practice theoretically, not practically. Because André Luiz is putting in practice what he learned through the books, right? He's talking to spirits, and when he talks to spirits, let's say in the book or the action and reaction, for instance, which is the next book we're going to study, he talks about, he teaches spirits. Where does he learn that? In the spiritual world. So he's using his own experience of learning the spiritual world to help. But like we heard many times Ilaha saying, right? For you to come here, you forget everything. You don't forget. You block everything that you knew in the spiritual world. So your feelings, your sentiments, you'll be able to show them, and then you'll see if you really learn or if it was theoretical learning, right? Yes, Danny.
Most of the books that I read so far talks more about, like we're talking about teaching and learning, right? Classes. It describes a lot the areas in which we have spirits like André Luiz that who wants to learn or are open to learning. And then you mentioned the openings of the books with lectures, right? So everybody's quietly listening, like wanting to absorb and learn. Is there any book or books that describe more how those teachings happen in areas like lower zone or areas that it's really hard to teach, like you don't come with a beautiful lecture and everybody's listening?
Yeah, there is the lower zones are not organized places, right? So that you don't have this type of studies and lectures. What you have is transitory houses of assistance that will rescue spirits from the lower zone, spirits that are ready, and give them opportunities to learn there in these transitory houses of assistance. And you have the description in Workers of Life Eternal, in the Messengers of a couple of those. So, but not in the middle of the lower zones where everything is disorganized. You don't have this class. So are the spirits learning there? They may be learning also, because we are always moving for progressing, right? So how they are learning? They are learning through the difficult spirits and challenges they are facing, right? What did André Luiz learn in these 8 years he spent in the lower zones? He learned that eventually he had to sincerely ask for help, that the help would come only when he sincerely asked for it. It took him 8 years, but he learned. How else would he ask for help if he didn't learn that that's what he needed? So we are always learning, but in the lower zones, in this, you are not learning in an organized way, right? Okay.
So it's basically rescue missions. They are not really open for any learning in an organized way, as you're saying. So, for example, here on Earth, we have schools that have students who are eager to learn and they're accessible, but you also have schools or groups that are not up to it. So teachers are really bringing everything down their throats or leaving their professions, like they don't want to teach anymore. So that was my question a little bit. So it's no organized teaching, but rescues, and then the learning has to happen on your own, basically, until you open up.
Yes, a different here where you force children to go to school because that's the law. There you don't force inferior spirits to go to where they don't want to go. You know, they give them an opportunity if they want to rescue and to help them. But if they don't want to be helped, they don't want, because they are not children, right? Here we have children. In spiritual world, you have colonies for children that they learn, they have schools and everything. But adult spirits, let's say, they only will go to, like here also, right? Adults don't go to school if they don't want to. They force themselves to go to school sometimes, but sometimes they end up giving up, right? So it's the same thing in the spiritual world. The difference is that here, for children, we put them in school and we force them to stay in school up to a certain age. That there in the spiritual world, there is no imposition on spirits that do not want to go to these places, to go to these places. But again, there is always help available for them, right? In the book, The Messengers, you learn about these large rooms on this spiritual house of assistance, transitory house of assistance, where you have spirits sleeping, right? So why they're sleeping? Why don't we wake up and teach them something? Because sleeping is what is needed for them in the first step of recovery. So they were just rescued from the lower zones. They are in no mental condition to deal with learning yet. They need to go through a period of resting, recovering, to then be prepared for learning. Okay? Okay.
228.
Yes.
Do spirits retain any of the human passions? Elevated spirits leave behind the bad passions when they shed their physical envelope and only retain the good passions. However, low-order spirits retain their earthly imperfections. Otherwise, they would belong to the highest order.
Okay, we go back to the spiritual world. We keep being exactly who we were the day before, right? With our earthly passions. Now, more elevated spirits, what they are saying here is that they leave behind the bad passions, meaning there are things that belong to the physical world that even more elevated spirits may experience when they are incarnated, but it doesn't belong to them as eternal spirits. The moment they leave it behind. Less evolved spirits carry with them back to the spiritual world their earthly imperfections. So I'm thinking of an example here, but it's a hard one, right? Let's talk about food, for instance, right?
It said that Chick Xavier was good with the fork and a half. He enjoyed his meals very much, and he loved coffee. He was like addicted to coffee almost. Yeah. A spirit at that level, having those passions while here in the physical world, once they go back to the spiritual world, they don't need it anymore. They leave all that behind. Different from us, they're knowing that the spiritual the next day, you're going to be looking for breakfast and sex, alcohol, all those things.
Yeah, that's a good example. You know, he used to get this little cup of coffee that he couldn't have, or Coca-Cola. He used to have get a cup of coffee also, hidden from the rest of the doctors that didn't want him to have all of these things. So again, you know, an elevated spirit, but I'm sure that he's back in the spiritual world, not missing any of these things. That's what they meant here. Okay.
$229. Why do spirits not leave behind all their wrongful passions when they leave the earth, considering that they are then able to perceive the disastrous consequences of those passions? There are people in your world who are excessively jealous. For example, do you think that they lose this imperfection immediately upon leaving your world? After the departure from physical life, especially those who have had well-marked passions, the spirits retain a kind of atmosphere that envelopes them that is infused with all their former negative base traits, since they are not entirely freed from the influence of materiality. They catch glimpses of the truth here and there, showing them the true path to follow.
Again, the change from incarnate to discarnate is a transition that can affect some spirits, but a lot of the spirits don't change anything with the transition back to the spiritual world. So if they hate someone, they continue hating there. And because they no longer have a physical body, the imperfections can take over the spirit. This passion, inferior passions can take over the spirit and occupy their minds 100% of the time. That's why they find themselves in these difficult places, because they allow their inferior tendencies to take over them. And because they don't have the distractions of our physical body that needs to sleep, needs to eat, needs to do other things, you have only the spiritual body, they get trapped in these inferior passions. They catch glimpses of truth here and there. Again, we are not impervious to external influences. So we will have opportunities to see these different things, but the spirits that are going to be able to entertain the different things are a smaller part of them. Most of the spirits that find themselves in the lower zones insist on continuing doing what they are doing and are not open to receive the assistance. And again, going back to André Luiz was not a bad person at all. He had his own imperfections. He was a doctor. He abused a little bit of his profession. He abused his physical body. That's why he was called a suicide. And he spent 8 years in the lower zones without understanding what was happening to him. It took him some time for him to understand what was happening to him, to understand that he needed to receive help. And when he finally opened himself to receive help and assistance, the assistance was there. As the spirit says, Clarencio tells him, we were always here. You didn't allow us to help you, in a sense, right? So depends on each one of us how long we are going to take to open ourselves to receive sincerely receive the assistance of the spiritual benefactors.
Now the will, I think about the will to make the changes. The same thing like here incarnate, when individuals are extremely jealous, they see that the relationships are not doing well because of the jealousy. They are always getting social difficulties because of the jealousy. And I find the whole world is wrong and they are right. Refuse to accept the reality, not have the will to look and try to make any change. They go to the spiritual, they're going to change. No, it's going to take a while. And that's when the benefit of the self-imposed punishment, so to say. You need to go to those difficulties to come to the realization that you have to make some change, some sacrifices to change. I mean, it's easy to use examples like cigarette smoking. It is impossible to, like, smoker today, deny that they don't know the cigarette smoke's not good for him or for her. All the evidence, other things that one has to be living on the rock, but if insists they continue wants to continue to smoke. I think it's all about the will, the desire. Opportunities we receive to see, to open our eyes. But if you want to keep it closed.
Yeah. Okay.
Question 230. Do spirits progress when they are in the errant state? They may, in proportion to their efforts and desire for improvement. It is in the physical life that they are put the new ideas they have acquired into practice.
That's what we mentioned before, right? Do spirits progress when they are in the spiritual world? Yes, they do, and we have examples. Of course, at the time of Kardec, this question was valid. He didn't have much, still much information from the spiritual world. He was still gathering information from the spiritual world. But nowadays, we see by the description of André Luiz how much he progressed in the spiritual world. Now, he also has to come here to the physical world to see if everything that he learned, he has to put in practice to see if he really changed, if it's not only a theoretical change, if it is a practical change, when it becomes part of who you are. You know, remember the story of Mother Teresa that left in a rush to help that individual that was dying in the middle of the garbage, right? And the journalist that followed her told her, I couldn't do that for $1 million. And she said, neither could I, only for love. It's because it's already part of who she is. She doesn't have to make an effort to do it. So she already has this love, compassion, and kindness that belongs to her. She may have acquired the learning in the spiritual world, but coming here as Mother Teresa allow her to put in practice what she really had become. If it was in this incarnation or previous incarnations, it can be also. I'm not saying that she became Mother Teresa in this incarnation. Probably she had in the previous ones, but I'm saying that's an example of putting in practice what you learn and acting on who you are, not on who you theoretically think you are, right? If she wasn't part of her, she would react exactly like the journalist, right? I couldn't do that, not even if they pay me, but she can.
I imagine Joanna de Angelis, if she comes back here, she'll be a new Mother Teresa.
Yes, exactly, for sure, yes. But again, she's not a perfect spirit yet.
No.
So she has to go through some experiences also, right? Learning experience. Okay.
231.
Yes.
Are errant spirits happy or unhappy? It depends on their merit. They suffer from the passions they have retained and are more or less happy depending on the strength of their connection to material life. When a spirit is in an errant state, it has perceptions of what it needs in order to be happy. When this happens, it is compelled to seek what it lacks. However, a spirit is not always permitted to reincarnate when it desires to do so, and in that case, it becomes a punishment.
So there are some things to go over here, right? Spirits, errant spirits, happy or unhappy, again, are incarnate beings happy or unhappy? Each one is a different case, right? You are going to find people that are happy, people that are unhappy, and everywhere in between. It's the same thing in the spiritual world. There are spirits that still suffer from their passions, their imperfections. They may be suffering in the spiritual world, but the willingness to address their unhappiness is what's going to make them change, or the unwillingness to change is what's going to make them continue to be unhappy. And again, sometimes they have flashes of happiness in the spiritual world that they would like to chase, but they don't have the strength, they don't have the courage, and they end up staying in their own inferior tendencies and challenges themselves. So sometimes only a reincarnation can change, and sometimes, as they say here, it's the spirit is not always permitted to reincarnate because it needs to change more in the spiritual world, change their feelings, change their sentiments to make better use of this new opportunity of a new reincarnation. Again, We are going to reincarnate when it's the best possible avenue for us to pursue. If our spirits, protecting spirits, think that a reincarnation would cause us more damage than help, they are not going to allow us to reincarnate for a certain period. They will wait for us to change a little bit more. That's what the spirits meant here. Okay.
232. Can errant spirits enter all worlds? That depends. When a spirit has left the body, it is not fully disengaged from matter. It still belongs to the world in which it has lived, or even a world of the same degree, unless it has risen to a world of higher degree. This progressive elevation should be the perpetual goal of every spirit, or else it would never reach perfection. A spirit may enter higher worlds, but it would be as an outsider. It can only obtain a glimpse of them, but such glimpses often trigger a desire to improve, to become worthy of the happiness that is enjoyed in those worlds, and to eventually live in them.
Read the last one, so we finish.
233. Do purified spirits ever enter lower worlds? They enter them very frequently to help these worlds advance. Otherwise, these worlds would be left to themselves without any guides to direct them.
Okay, so when we're talking about spirits in the spiritual world, can they enter all the worlds? No, they can only enter the worlds that belong to the category that they belong to. So the spirits that are here on Earth can incarnate in planets of trials and atonements, but cannot incarnate yet in worlds of regeneration, because we haven't evolved enough, the majority of us, to move to a higher world. When Earth changes to a world of regeneration, the spirits, all the spirits that are here, will be able to go to any world of regeneration. Normally we stay close to the world in which we have lived, right? So all spirits that are around Earth, which is 22 to 30 billion that belong to Earth, are here. Of them, there are some more elevated spirits that are staying here with us to help us progress, which is the next question, right? Purified spirits ever enter lower worlds? They enter them very frequently to help those worlds of advance. Enter both in incarnation and discarnated by giving them messages and inspiring them, things like that. We have Jesus, perfect spirit, incarnated here. We have spirits that clearly can go to a more evolved world, like Mother Teresa, like Bezerra de Menezes, that chose to stay here on Earth to help and assist those in need, because we need assistance. And you have even spirits like Alcyone from the book Renunciation that chooses to reincarnate on Earth, even if she already belongs to a more evolved planet, because she wants to help a specific person incarnated here, a loved one. So she comes to a new incarnation, a reincarnation on Earth. So spirits can always go lower. To go higher only to obtain a glimpse, like André Luiz had the opportunity to have a glimpse of the place that his mother was living, which was a more evolved world, but as an outsider, not as someone that belongs to that world. Okay? Any questions, comments here?
And in this case, like the André Luiz's mom, she reincarnated here, so she came
To help
to town, let's say, to help the
former husband and the two lovers of the husband, right? That she was going to receive them as daughters. Yes. So again, she could have reincarnated there, or where she is, but her loved ones are still here. And we are, again, a mother doesn't leave a child behind in the vast majority of cases, right? So you're not going to leave a world if you have loved ones that still need your help. You're going to try to help them. And again, the understanding that we are eternal souls, you're not just, you're delaying. Eternity is eternity, so you're not delaying anything, right? You are actually building something for you, because the moment you are incarnating here to help your loved ones, you're also progressing. Yeah. Okay. All right, we're going to stop here. Next week we go to transitional worlds. We're going to talk about the different worlds that we can reincarnate. Just a reminder, this weekend is a long weekend of Labor Day on the holiday on Monday, so SGNY will be closed on Monday. There will be no lecture by the United States Spiritist Federation on Saturday, but we will have our study of the book Between Heaven and Earth on Sunday at 11 a.m. We are in the middle or in the beginning of chapter 32, and we'll, I think it's 32 and 33, or 33 and 34, but we stopped in the middle of one chapter. Book club next Wednesday, still in chapter 2 of part 2. And another thing, the Spiritist group of Connecticut that used to have their meetings on Thursdays at noon, as of next week, they will start having their meetings on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Okay, so they are studying Our Daily Bread and the Gospel According to Spiritism. So they'll start doing it on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Same Zoom, same everything that we use for our classes. Okay. Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Yes, certainly, John. And thank you very much, John. Thank you, Elma. And thank you, Philip, for reading this evening, and everyone who has been participating tonight. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks to be together for our study of the Spirit's book, Chapter 6 in Book 2, the subject being Errant Spirits. Reincarnation is almost immediate in higher worlds. However, errant spirits of every degree are doing things in the spiritual world and will continue to reincarnate in the physical world to purify themselves from prior lives. They study, observe, can learn, and may improve. The time interval between lives will vary, and it is unique for each spirit, depending on their will and their desire to change, or whether it is an imposed atonement. They may be happy or unhappy during the interim. A glimpse of the higher worlds may inspire them to progress. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us this evening. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us for our loved ones, our teachers, our directors, the counselors, the mediums, the workers, and all the participants. We pray for inner peace, and especially now for world peace, and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center, SGNY, and all Spiritist centers throughout the world, that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. May we now go forth as beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and charity, which is love in action. May peace and love prevail. So be it.